Look at this. I got headphones on. I got a mic going. Baby. Huh?
If only people could see you now.
Hey, no video. We've gone through this before.
All
No video.
All right. Welcome to This Commerce Life. This is a podcast aimed at small, medium entrepreneurs focused on commerce. I'm Phil, your host, and Kenny, your co-host, will join us as well. And we're going to talk to you about the world of retail and commerce and how things are changing in the world. Yeah, I did nothing of the sort. I did explain to them that your phobia of always thinking you're in the wrong place.
Well, I was in the wrong place. I had an updated schedule, but it was a different meeting room.
Oh, really?
Right date, September 30th, 2021, 11 till noon. Yeah. And I thought, okay, but I go there and I'm thinking, by myself again.
Only one at the party again.
It's always how it plays.
Yeah. Between Scott and I, it's normally me, so it resonates, Kenny. It resonates.
Okay, well, you know what? It makes me feel better. Thank you, because
you're welcome.
It's such a lonely feeling. I'm just sitting there thinking, again, I've screwed something up. I know it's me. I'm going to hear from the other one, who's the tech smart one. I'm going to hear it again.
They're both HR pros, so they're really good at feeling like emoting empathy, right? So
they're more like people, Phil, not like you and I.
Don't take this away from Ken.
See, that is an HR way to do it. I would have been more like Phil. So because I was a buyer and a little bit, so we had no feelings and basically followed limited rules.
Pretty rough around the edges.
Yeah.
Definitely not HRs. They're probably more case studies than anything else. Anyway, that's all good.
We'll label it E for entertainment at this point in time, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's awesome. So we have Scott Rust and Ange on, and they are partners at Intuity Performance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to get these guys on. I have been working with Scott and Ange for a little while now. And I just have a world of respect for what they do, and I think I asked them to come on because I think we're kind of at that point where we have the same audience, but with a whole bunch of different needs in there. Among them are folks that are like Kenny and I. We spent kind of a million years in retail and have exited the industry or have gone out to do other things. And we know a ton of folks that listen to us that are in the industry that worry about getting out of the industry. We're also, the industry itself is struggling with what everybody else is struggling with, like how do you work differently post-pandemic and all those sort of things. And I thought it was a neat time for you guys to come on because we were talking about all of these things. You guys are talking about all these things as well. So I thought it'd be cool to get you guys on. So what I thought we would do is, so what we normally do is, I've made the intro. I've actually made the intro a little early. Normally we wander around for
10 minutes after this.
10 minutes or so, but I made the intro a little early. I thought maybe if the two of you want to introduce yourselves and then kind of give us a sense of who you are and what Intuity. I've gone super light on what Intuity does, so you can kind of tell them who you are and then what you do and what Intuity does, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much for having us. First and foremost, we're really excited. I know we bounced around in our schedules and we finally connected. So it's great to be here. So I don't know, Scott, did you want to go first and you can do our elevator pitch? No,
that's all good.
No, you're going to kick it back. Scott and I were joking beforehand, just as a preamble. I'm definitely the chatty one out of the bunch. And so he was like, at 32 minutes in, I'm going to stick up my hand and say, okay, I need to say something now. Otherwise, people are going to question why my name's here.
Oh, you need to jump in. Like we've got definitely 3 chatty Cathys on this thing.
Yeah, so. And there's no rules here, man. Just do what you want.
I've listened to a few episodes, so I've recognized that.
Yeah.
Just light it up. You can't hurt anybody's feelings.
No, exactly. So very excited to be here. So a little bit about myself and Intuity Performance. I don't think it's fair at this point to speak on Scott's behalf and his story, so we'll make him chime in. So I'm an HR practitioner by trade. So I've been in senior HR leadership roles for over 12 years now, climbing through the proverbial quote unquote ranks. And I found myself at one point in my office sitting there thinking, is this it? And you know what it's like in HR, either being on either side of that fence where there's push-pull, right? So you're pushing to be at that executive table, to be heard and to help bring the neutrality of the team members and the leaders together. And then there's that pull of, wanting to ensure that the right things are being done for the team members in chaotic times, because when there's people, there's always chaos at some form, right? And so what I started questioning was, is this it in the sense of what fires me up? I was finding that it was kind of that 9 to 5 grind. I was getting more tired. I wasn't seeking out kind of joy as I normally would be. And so I started questioning myself, because I'm a strong believer as a problem solver that only I can change how I feel. Only I am responsible for my moods and how I act. And if I'm not in a good place, then I need to make sure that I am, so that I can serve other people. And being a self-proclaimed HR geek, I did a SWOT analysis on myself. And what I came out with was that I get super fired up when it comes to organically coaching people at that point in time. So I didn't have training behind me then, as well as, helping build strategy, helping solve problems from a people lens. And I was an odd HR bird because I believed in the HR systems, but I didn't always believe that they worked. And trying to find that resolve between operations, leadership, and proper peopling was an interesting, solution for me. So I started thinking, okay, what type of job can I get as a coach, as a trainer, and as a consultant? And here on the East Coast, I'm based out of Bedford, Nova Scotia. The answer is none, unless we go and we travel or go remote. And I've always had the entrepreneurial bug. Back in my 20s, I owned a jewelry creation business and chose HR over arts, I guess we'll say. And, but always have been really curious about businesses, how they run, how they're successful and scale, et cetera, et cetera. And so I started thinking about, okay, how can I set myself up for success? So getting certification in coaching, which was the intersect with meeting Scott, which is another story that I hopefully will be able to share later, and doing other certifications like DISC behavioral assessor, emotional intelligence assessor, facilitation, the HR practitioner, really investing in myself for multiple reasons, of course. And then, then came the day where it was, landing in another corporate environment where, promised job A and it's job C, not a great workplace culture. And that was the light bulb for me to say that I'm seeing things differently. I'm hearing things a bit differently. And more so, I guess I have the gusto to say something about it. And that was where I really found my differentiating factor. Because when I talked to my other HR peeps, they were just as frustrated as I was, or, they were finding different politically correct ways to speak to it, where I would just speak to it. And I get in trouble. I won't lie. I wasn't the favorite person on the executive team all the time because, I would call it. And so the inception of Intuity Performance was founded because we really want to bridge the gap between knowledge and action. And we want to help people in organizations realize that people are our biggest assets. And then on top of that, this thing called emotions, it's a buzzword, it's this trend, but how do we normalize it so that everybody has access to how to interact with people in the workplace? And that was the birth of Intuity Performance. And one quick story, I guess, behind that, it's weird, the connection that my son and I have. He says things at odd times when coincidentally they're happening. So one of which was starting the business. I didn't say anything around him. I've only spoken to my parents on the phone about it, and very close friends. And he says, Mama, you should start a business. So at this point in time, he was 4. And I was like, great idea. Not much else was said. So of course, I'm excited when I opened the doors to Intuity Performance. And I said, dude, I opened my business. And he was just like, awesome. When do we get to go to the toy factory? And so that was a huge case in point in peopling of expectations. And I let my boss down. Let's just say that. So I've since reprieved myself, and he's told me that he's proud of what Scott and I are doing. But moving forward, the other thing that I noticed was opening the doors 2 months ahead of the pandemic. So January 13th, 2020. Pandemic hit almost like literally 2 months later, March 13th, 18th, there was some big stuff going on.
Right.
And Scott and I were chatting. We met in the coaching circle essential through our certifications. And so we started chatting more about projects and doing webinars together. And Scott came to me with this business idea that was really similar to what I was doing. And, like all smart entrepreneurs, we had, conversations for a solid 6 to 8 months. So I'm second in command to his wife. And I know everything, including his social insurance number. And we decided to partner up October 1st. So literally, I don't know when this is going out, but literally almost to the date of our partnership anniversary. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So yeah. So, and then it was in the books from there. We just started sprinting. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm finding out new things. This is kind of cool.
Yeah, and we'll circle back to some
I
questions in a second. I want to hear Scott's story too now.
So, one thing, Ange, you were right. I should have went first because now I have to follow that up.
Remember, though, you can talk about anything you want.
Yeah.
You've got a cute sidebar story that just sounds great. Light it up, baby.
I appreciate it. So I guess giving a little bit of background about myself and kind of, I know Ange talked a little bit about how we met and how we came to form Intuity Performance. But before that, we'll kind of go back maybe 5 or 6 years. I was working for an organization overseas. It allowed me to travel and allowed me to work from home, which for me really sounded like a dream job. Until 3 or 4 weeks in, I realized that I had a lot of bad habits. I had trouble, getting up in the morning and staying on time and on task. With my boss literally 12 hours ahead of me in Asia, there was nobody really holding me accountable to what I needed to be getting done. And so it was one of those situations where I decided, okay, well, I can either coast by and this job probably wouldn't work out, or I have some changes I can make. And just by nature, I always went for the latter there and said, all right, what are these changes I might be able to make? And I started to write a list that probably all of us have written at least one point in our lives. And I told myself, okay, I'm going to start waking up early. I'm going to start accomplishing all the tasks on my to-do list that I set each day. I'm going to start eating healthy and going to the gym and taking on all these things at once. Taking on all these things at once, I quickly failed. And so looking back, I kind of decided that, okay, well, what if there was just one thing I might be able to focus on that would have an impact on everything else? What would that look like? And so I decided that if I was able to wake up early, I would have that much more time to be able to do all these other things I want to do on my to-do list. And so 4 or 5 months later, I finally made waking up early a habit. And what that really showed me was the power of behavior change. You can actually change the way you do things. And that's what really opened up my eyes. And I started doing a deep dive around behavior change, around habit development, and better understanding, like really internally, like what makes us tick. And how do we implement these kinds of things? And so since then, I continued to work for that job for 4 or 5 years. I ended up getting my certification with the International Coaching Federation, and that's where both Ange and I had met. I believe this was back in 2019.
Yes.
And to your point, Ange, I mean, we both had our own businesses at the time. We were really in the space of wanting to help elevate others, really help them see their potential and help invest in themselves. And so, I mean, to your point, Ange, I mean, we had 6 or 8 months of conversations and kind of back and forths until I officially came on as co-founder and COO of Intuity Performance. And ever since then, it's one of those things where you don't know what you're missing until you have it. And that's how I talk about Ange. She's one of those partners that, within the business here.
And I got to say it, you don't know what you're missing until you have it. And so it's been a fantastic journey so far. I'm really looking forward to the next.
So you crushed it going second.
Yeah.
Not bad, right? All right.
Crushed it. What are you talking about?
I said the bar lower.
Now you're killing the rest of us. Now what are we going to say? Oh my God, you just killed the podcast for the three of us. Wow. Those are cool stories.
Yeah.
Those are cool stories.
And they're together now. Isn't that amazing?
Which is really cool. Can I just ask a couple quick questions from both of you?
Of course.
Just so I get a little context. So what exactly did you do in the corporate world that you came from? Like you said you were in human resources, but with whom? Was it like a multinational? Was it small? Was it 50 different players? Like what was it?
That's a great question. So basically I'm a Swiss Army knife. So I've worked for government, I've worked for non-government, I've worked in construction, transportation, logistics. I've worked in the tech space a little bit. I've also worked with NGOs in the past. I'm just thinking of my job history here. The telecom space, and then previously as a consultant. So that's a whole host of different demographics as well.
You got to be like 95 at that I don't know how that. I'm doing the math. Okay, I don't want to. Wow. Okay, that's.
I couldn't keep a job. No, just joking. From a consulting perspective, I had the opportunity in my early 20s. So we were in and out of, I think, in 1 year, 75 businesses at one point. Sometimes it was one-off projects. Sometimes it was retainer work. Oftentimes I was brought in, client facing, and then from also a sales perspective. So that really catapulted me. And then being involved in companies that had multiple businesses under one shell, right? Or being with other companies that had mergers or acquisitions. Right. And then also in my young years in insurance and benefits. So so I was able to, I guess, catapult or project myself into organizations where I could get intentional HR experience. Because I knew that, like, stereotypically, I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young either. Back in the quote unquote day in HR, the way that it works is that you start recruitment, but you have to be careful because you can pigeonhole yourself into recruitment versus being a generalist or a strategist in HR, that type of thing. So I wanted to make sure that I was on the management side of things. And so sometimes lateral movements and upward movements is what it took to get there. Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just curious because that you rattled off a 50,000. I thought, wow, okay. Unless you stay 10 minutes at each, I don't know how you do this.
It'd be easier to list the ones you haven't been a part of. Maybe.
Well, that's probably right.
Yeah.
And Scott and yourself, so I get an idea of your world is too. Just for context,
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so I remember days that, I'm 12 years old sitting around the kitchen table and he's asking me questions about what his business should do. And Phil's nodding his head because Phil knows my dad. And that's how actually we got connected. So I've always kind of grown up in that entrepreneurial world throughout my life. And so I said that was probably one of the major influences I've had in kind of wanting to start my own business and growing up. And then from the other perspective, in terms of the company I was representing, it was a manufacturing facility out in Asia that manufactured different performance leathers and materials for footwear brands. So a lot of the work that I did was traveling around the US, meeting with different international brands, presenting different materials, and really aligning what their needs were with some of the products that we had to offer.
Oh, interesting. Like two different really backgrounds too, in a lot of respects. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, they're really cool. So let's go. Let's so tell us about Intuity Performance. Like what kinds of, because I think our listeners come from retail, CPG. They kind of come from all walks of life, so they'll kind of sort of understand, and then they'll kind of sort of not understand.
For sure. So we at Intuity Performance, we focus on the person behind the job, not just the job itself. We do that through what we call whole person performance. And that's workplace training. So the HR side of things, coaching and facilitations. And oftentimes what resonates with many of the clients that we work with or potential clients is that we want to set them up for success. And the first instance, or the first step for us, is to really listen and understand what they need. So instead of us telling them out of the gate what we have and it's going to fit, we ask a lot of questions. So we put on that coaching hat, even in the first instance, for our potential clients in those conversations. And that way we can identify which avenue are we going with, because we have the trifecta effect going for us within Intuity Performance. Oftentimes it may start with a project. So it could be something like policy or job descriptions, grassroots HR, maybe it's advisement, or maybe it's a facilitation to help leverage leadership or their quote unquote, what we call human skills through emotional intelligence or behaviors. And so all it's to say is that it all starts with conversations with us, and we're really about relationship building.
Awesome.
Mm.
So, wow, so many things in there. Where to start? So, your typical types of clients, like where do they, like what kinds of clients?
How would they find you?
How
are you getting it? Like, why would I know about the two of you, or what would I come to you for?
Well, no, they would hear them on this podcast.
Of course.
That's how.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I just gave that as a given, Phil. Trying to get a little deeper than just the podcast.
So what's interesting, and recognizing, that I know Intuity Performance is 2 years old and our partnership is 1 year old. I would say, even like looking back at our demographics and like, okay, who's our ideal client? It wasn't so much looking at the industry. It wasn't so much looking at those normal things you might look at, but rather it was leaders that are willing to invest in their people. They recognize that their most important asset was actually the people within their organization. And it's the types of leaders that know that by putting their people first, they'll be able to create that environment that empowers them to achieve the objectives they're looking for. And so that's the kind of common thread that we've seen, whether we're working with tech organizations or software or the NGOs that we work with in our space, or even jumping into the medical space now. It's that they really want to help elevate the performance of their teams and of themselves.
Mm-hmm. You vet that, Scott. So it's maybe a silly question, but how do you vet that? Because the first question would be, do you believe in your team? Well, of course I believe in my team. It's all about the people. It's all about my team. Everything I do is for the team. It's the team. You're thinking, I mean, who doesn't?
You sound
say
slightly cynical there.
I'm just in general. I'm a cynical person by nature. I've worked for a lot of different. I've worked for a lot.
You've heard that before, right?
I just, it's a common thread. And you're thinking, well, everybody says that. Who doesn't say that? Well, I mean, I know a few people didn't. At least they were honest about it.
Yeah.
I'd want to work with them, but they were pretty clear.
Definitely. So a few things come up for me, and Scott, chime in here, but even on the retail side, where we've been chatting a lot more with clients, when we're having conversations, we've gotten great at asking questions that speak to their culture, what we call cultural alignment. So based on what they say, based on what they're saying and doing and what's written on the walls, is it all matching, right? So, and we don't do that in a malicious way, but rather a fact-finding way to understand if there's a fit between Intuity Performance and that potential client or clients.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's, so where does, so the organizations you work with, what, are there kind of like key signals of things that, are there kind of key like indicators? So I mean, like a good example, Kenny and I work with a lot of smaller brands, right? Like kind of under 10 million, we work with folks like that. Yep. They're in growth mode, they're growing, they're trying to be explosive about growth. But they all have similar, like for us, they have similar from the marketing side and from the sales side, they have similar key indicators, right? It's like when I get to the marketing stuff, there's one poor marketing manager trying to do an entire department's worth of work. There's usually one salesperson who is trying to call on like every store he can find, and then also like figure out how to like sell, ship, truckloads to Walmart, for example. So to us, like they're kind of like key indicators along the way that you kind of go, oh, I understand where these guys are at, and I understand the stage they're at.
Yep.
Are there things for you, like I know that you do some matching around what they say versus the way they conduct themselves, and kind of what the lay of the land looks like, but are there kind of key indicators in there somewhere as well that you use to help you figure out where they are?
Yeah, that's a great question for clarification. And I think we could mirror that kind of criteria in the same manner. But for us, it's when we're speaking to small to mid-sized businesses that have either been on the tech side recently publicly funded and there's a CEO in place, or it kind of matches our niche size market is one piece of it. The other piece too is oftentimes instead of one salesperson trying to call in every organization or knock on everyone's door, rather it's the financial. So the CFO or the director of finance has HR as a project, essentially. That's a key indicator for us to start having conversations, as well as when we're talking to key stakeholders, they're saying, hey, I see this thing happening. I'm not impressed with it, meaning I want the best for my team, but guys and girls, I don't know how to deal with this. Right. Make me understand this, right? That's a huge one for me anyways. That's like, okay, this can be a fit. Like there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. I'm laughing. It's an audio podcast, so nobody can see me laughing silently. But I'm laughing, right? Because I think this is, I recognize these signs all over the place. Mm-hmm. The finance person who has HR as a side project is definitely one that I resonate with.
Well, it sort of all does, right? I'm thinking, I sent him a Teams on another one. I walk up into the building and there's all the stuff on the wall and we believe in this, we believe in that, we believe in this. And then you get in there thinking, you don't believe in shit because I'm not too sure what the hell you're saying. Because what you said isn't what you're sort of showing, right? I'm not too sure. Hey, those are nice words. Now maybe there was a deal on the words. I don't know. Maybe you got a deal on the, they're trying to sell out. HomeSense was running out of stock. I don't know what it was, but you're kind of thinking, your story's not matching. Matching your what you're trying to profess, right? Mm-hmm. And it can be like HR on the side of finances plate or something like that is so common.
It is.
Like
it really is.
3 or 4 clients that I had in the last 2 years that would definitively had that. It was just, it's always the same thing. It's a cost center. What do I get out of it?
Exactly.
People are always whining.
Yes.
There's always this. You're thinking it's always the same stuff, and you're thinking, guys. I mean, of any place to spend time, money, and effort is in human resources, because the rest can be negatively impacted by the issues of human resources, whatever they are, right?
I'm curious, Kenny, has that always been your thought process, that you've been an advocate for HR, or was there a shift that kind of?
When I started, like, especially probably when I was in retail, like in the stores for years and years and years, right? You could sort of understand it, but really you're just doing the day to day, and you would get to the point where it was just like, people were just whiny. That's what you'd go with, right? Because you're just running, trying to open doors and close doors, right? Mm-hmm. As time went on and the older I got, and probably when I had kids too, et cetera, how you sort of mellow as you age. Kids mellow you as you age, because you find out how wrong you are in so many avenues of life that I didn't realize I was that wrong. But I think I sort of softened, Scott, as I went on, where you start to look at it and you think, as critical as the money is and as critical as the sales are and the marketing and the mechanics, if you don't have people who are happy, overused, but engaged, probably underused, the right button, the right seat, even though it is overused, but really not, it's used as a saying, not as really following it. Like, do you have these people? Are they capable of doing it? And if they're not, what could they do? Not first to the exit. Is there a somewhere else within your world? Because maybe you really like these people. Can they do something else? Do they fit with what you actually do believe at your core? And does that core, emanate throughout the building? So you see, I mean, if you talked to me 20 years ago, that's definitely not coming out of my mouth. I wouldn't have given a shit. I would have just said, listen, you're whining. door, let's go next. Right? Because, when I was a buyer, if I didn't like something, if I was a buyer, if you didn't like a product, you just discontinue it. It was easy.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the best human resource project in the world. Yeah, discontinued, gone. But, a little harsh with people potentially, right? I mean,
that's a certain vibe to it, Kenny. Certain vibe to it.
But, you get to the point and you start thinking, wow, I mean, and it's probably because I started working with smaller companies again, where you think, wow, I mean, if you don't have a really good core and a really good understanding and feeling, it's never going to go.
And it's also, like when you work for big companies, right? Like you do get a bit cynical, right? Because you start looking at companies and you realize, like, I'm kind of one of 300. Like, I've been that number, right? Like in Change Canada, I was one of 300. When I was part of the US organization, I was one of 10,000 maybe. And you kind of go, there's kind of like 8 people that could do my job, 3 that probably do my job. What's the big deal, right? Like, and so, you get a little more aggressive, but when you're in small groups, it's like everybody has 5 jobs and none of them are replaceable, right? So then you start looking at people going, this person is really amazing what they do. I'm petrified to lose this person because God, like this could set us back, 4 months, 6 months, maybe it fucks up my entire year and I have no idea how to recover.
Or the entire company.
Right? Like, right? Like all sorts of and that's not being dramatic. That's actually like one of the companies that Kenny and I work with, they are so tight that they don't really have coverage. Do you know what I mean? Like they are really resource constrained. So you're kind of like, okay, so if you're the finance group, you just nobody can take month end. Sorry. Like
right.
But you worry about, like when does that become too much? Like for an employee, when does that,
right.
Clearly we shouldn't be trusted with these because neither just tell them they can't go on vacation. I don't understand what the problem is. Right?
Something came up for me back when Kenny was talking about, previous, I guess pre-kids or sans children is what I'm trying to get out here. It's just, you're gone. There hasn't been enough, I guess, positive media or words, I don't know what you call it, about human resources in general. When you think about human resources, what do you think about? Paper, administration, bureaucracy, red tape. If I'm in trouble, I'm going to see the HR person. Stereotypically speaking. But what I see in the HR world is advocates, is human equity, is empathy, is looking to create those finite solutions for team members and the employer. So those win-win. And we haven't really given the respect that's due, if I may be bold here, for HR and the responsibilities that we have on a daily basis. Like if I told my boss 10 years ago that I didn't get a policy project done because I was talking to an employee at the time who just lost his wife, his child had a drug dependency, and he had no clue what to do, that wouldn't have been valued. But yet I kept that guy on the job. He didn't go on WCB. He didn't go on stress leave, and he was able to get the help that he needed. These are the types of that's huge. Silent fights that HR goes through legitimately on a daily basis. And then you throw a pandemic in there and it's quadrupled, right? So when you're inside organizations, it's not just about empowering your HR from an administration perspective. It's empowering them to make sure your team members are okay. And these HR people, like when they click and they get it, they are your passion. Like they are your heart. Gary Vee, he doesn't name his HR person HR. It's a chief heart officer. Like it's a CHR, like the CHO, I think is what he dubs her, right? So, and rightfully so, because it's the beating heart of every organization. It's your people center. And that's why oftentimes organizations lean into not calling us HR anymore, but rather people and culture or some sort of title around those, because we want to give out a different, I guess, a different array of responsibilities. Now, don't get me wrong, we still have to do those things like policy, because people need that as well. The other thing that came up for me too, I'm going on a bit of tangent, so drag me in if I'm going out of left field here, but
there are no left fields on the show.
Yes, and you know what? It's really hard for me.
As many left turns
no,
as you want.
You want.
So I can go in like circles if I want to. Yeah, we'll just put some music behind it. The other thing that came up for me is that when it comes to corporate cultures, one thing that has never changed but has become more acceptable is the fact that we're humans, period. I'll say it again. We're humans. So as humans, we have basic needs, feelings of basic needs of being safe, of being accepted, of feeling wanted and valued within the organization. And it's almost like as organizations or companies, we create this complex thing around trying to figure out people and how they fit and where they go, when it can be really simple. Ask them what they want and tell them what they can get, and hear them when they have an issue and try to problem solve with them versus dictating. So if we go right back down to the constructs of who we are, which comes down to emotional intelligence, it's almost like we're grown-ups, but we're toddlers when it comes to our emotions, right? And so
you're talking to three boys on this. We understand this better than most.
Yeah,
like
the
we
bar's
have
already really low.
There's literally like 3 different ages here, and yet we're all 18 still. So we totally get this one.
But I mean, it's like, okay, picture sitting inside of our brain, and it's just this blank room. You have a blank canvas, white room, one chair. Let's make it kind of like sterile per se. But then all of a sudden you put this toddler in there that's expected to perform with the utmost ability to interact, to converse, to get things done, to deal with stress, to take on the whole world like Superman, Superwoman, super person, when they haven't been taught how to deal with any of it.
Right.
So you have this toddler running around having these mini tantrums that's on a roller coaster up and down every single day, and still expecting them to perform. And that's where, HR is now being straddled with almost like an ethical dilemma, because we're in charge of wellness, but we're not fully trained on it. We're in charge of people's emotions and how we're dealing with things, but we're not trained on that either. We're trained on HR. And so you'll see more and more HR professionals now reaching out and getting extra certifications or executive development in areas like emotional intelligence, because that's at the forefront and we know it. And organically speaking, I always go back to this, and I probably, Scott's like, oh, here we go again with this story. But, Harvard Business has done a really great job with regards to the research team around emotional intelligence, publicating it, I should say. But one stat that really stuck with me is that organically speaking, strong leaders are 88% more emotionally intelligent than the leaders that are not so strong. Makes sense, right?
Makes sense.
Because when you boil it down to, again, it goes back down to, am I safe at work? Can I be heard at work? Am I valued at work? And those are some of the things that kind of come up time and time again when we're speaking with clients. And I think from our value proposition perspective, and Scott, chime in here, it's one of the hardest things to talk about, but yet it's so simple.
And if I can add, frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating from the sense, and sorry, Ange, I'm taking away from your eloquent response here, because I think it was so well put, but just frustrating in the sense that, like, if this is so important for us at work, in life, and everything, why aren't we learning it? Why isn't this being inputted into our education system?
Well, why isn't it being taught?
That'll be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's the challenge though, right? It's hard to learn what you don't teach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, someone's got to teach us these things. I think as we've gotten, and I'm hoping it's gotten better over the years, where what I was, and probably kids, I think kids have had a lot to do with it, because as a parent, you are more of you're a dictator at times, but you're also the benevolent dictator and a coach all at the same time. You're trying to get them to do things because you want them to get to a place, and you don't want them to break a knee, but a scrape ain't going to kill them. And you're trying to teach them all these little things so that they can learn and develop and grow as they go, right? and you got to bring that to work. Like not everybody is the same, and you can't cookie cutter. And I think probably in the old days, that's probably why we viewed HR what it was. It was all policies. Yep. It was the no fun club, because all you did is ask HR, they were going to say no, and here's 50 rules why you couldn't. You're thinking, whatever, man, just do it. That's when and it was because most companies I ever came from or knew were run by accountants or let's say lawyers or someone in those things, and probably not the greatest HR people as a very generalized statement, and probably put very limited value outside of I have to have this because you know what, I don't want to get sued or I don't want to get into trouble. And it was like never for what you're saying, which it should have been more of about, how do you get the best out of your people? How do you make them the best they can be? How much time do you want to spend with your people to get them these levels? Like that's supposed to be our role as the leaders. I mean, what else are we doing this for otherwise, right? I mean, I know we're making money. I get that, but
yeah.
I think it's also the way, because I think getting to know you too, the way that you get to your employees matters as well. Because we've seen that too, right? We've seen really well-intentioned individuals try to incent their employees, except if you don't know what you're doing, it can come off all wrong, right?
Yeah,
like
it wasn't intended that way, right?
No, so I just think you're right though. Like it is frustrating on both sides. Like even getting jobs where I've had to manage people, like especially that first job when you got to manage somebody and you have no idea, like I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Like and then you kind of watch the other managers around you not realizing that they didn't. I always thought like, oh, maybe it's just a really busy time of year, so I didn't get training, but I'm sure I'll get it later. So
you're so kind.
You're so nice.
But like when you're young, right? Like when the first time you get the job, you don't think, fuck, they just threw me in it, right? Like usually you kind of go, I'm sure there's more skills to be had, but either they haven't dialed me in yet, or I haven't connected to the managers club, so I'll just watch the people. And then you realize later, you're like, I'm watching all the wrong people. Like these guys are terrible. And then you realize, oh, they didn't get training either. Like there is no connected managers club. You just fumble along until you get it, right? Like,
yeah,
kind exactly. Of terrible. Like, yeah,
exactly. And that's an interesting piece all in itself, because when you use the word manager, leader, it means different. It's a different definition for each organization or company you work with, right? Because it has to, align with their strategy and align with their culture. And each one is different. And larger scale businesses, it's even more of a beast, because then they have their geographical culture, and aligning even definitions in some organizations can be a lot of legwork, right? So it's definitely an art when it comes to leadership and management in general, really coming from the top down as to how we're showing up for our team members and what we support and what we don't support. And if there's anything that I had learned in my career, it's that it's okay if you're a for-profit business. Just identify that and operate as such, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're really for your people and your customers and you're willing to invest in your people, then say that too.
Say that too, though.
Right. Yeah. But like oftentimes there's a lot of for-profit companies, or even, genuine companies, and they just don't have budgets, where they're advertising as something totally different because they feel like that's the right thing to do.
Right.
Versus really truly looking inward and being like, this is who we really are. This is what we really mean. It doesn't have to be big, audacious or fancy words on your wall. You don't have to hire a communications consultant to develop this for you. It just has to mean something to the leadership and be acted upon throughout the whole organization and reminded. That's another thing too. Like it's not, when it comes to culture's a relationship on itself, in my mind. It's not one and done. It's, how do we, and I feel like businesses and organizations are getting much better at it. So when we're writing our core values, for example, it's how they show up, right? So if we're giving someone expectations as to what customer service means, Well, in our own language, we're going to tell them that too, versus just we're the best for our customers, right? So I feel like we're evolving somewhat in that sense, but still kind of behind the times based on what our people need almost, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
That could be also because, again, I think that it's sort of what you first, or what I took out of it is really the only way to do it is you got to be true. You got to be true.
Yeah.
So the authenticity word, which again is overused, but you got to be true. You got to be true to yourself. And if you are in a for-profit and you believe certain things, then that's fine. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. There's nothing wrong with different styles of leadership. Yeah. I may not like working with many of them, but that's my choice too. Mm-hmm. Others that may be okay with that. It doesn't matter, right? But at least be true to you. Mm-hmm. So if your goal is, you know what, it's all about the money and not about the people, well, then that's where your organization is going to run. Mm-hmm. I guess ultimately, if that's really what you want, that's fine. You'll attract people that can live in that world and are okay with that. And that's fine too. But it's the ones that drive me crazy was like the one I said, you walk up the wall and you read all these words and they're all bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking you're not about that. I mean, you should have just said we're for the money. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Right. At least I know what I'm getting into.
Exactly.
Right. No biggie.
You do get, there are great big organizations where I remember interviewing and they were like, oh, we've got all these perks. We've got dry cleaning. We've got all these, and I said, oh, this is so cool. And he said, it's not cool. He said, we do those things because we're going to ask you to work 1 million hours. And we just want to make sure that when you leave here, you don't, you're not fretting about, so like, we know you need dry cleaning, you need to eat 3 squares a day, like you need to get a haircut, you need to get massage therapy, all that kind of stuff. So we bring that crap to you because we don't want you to leave the building because we're going to ask you to work 1 million hours. And
at least it was clear.
I didn't mind that, right? Because at least they were really, really upfront with the fact that, listen, like this job, we want to make money and we're going to grind hard. So if you don't want to be here, don't be here. But if you're coming in, we will make sure that every convenience is here so you don't have to stress about it, but you're going to work like 1 million hours, right? And so people in that culture, they didn't, like, I actually know a lot of people that came out of those cultures and went, yeah, it was great. Because I was young. That's what I wanted. I wanted to grind, but like I didn't want to wear the same clothes wrinkly to work because I didn't have time to pick up, the rest of my wardrobe. They was stuck at the dry cleaners or stuck in my trunk because I could never get there in time. Right. So, it was okay. It's kind of cool. So,
yeah. And what comes up for me in that is, it's really about whatever words you want to wrap around it, communicating expectations or having two-way conversations or safe to fail conversations. It's really about having those live access points with your people and being true to it, right? As Kenny had said. And the other piece that comes up for me is like communicating how people want to be communicated to versus how you think that they ought to be communicated to. And, one of the first, I guess, examples that I experienced in my younger years was I had 3 bosses and each one of them had a different style, had the utmost respect for every single one of them. But I was exhausted at the end of the day trying to figure out how to speak to these people, so one was short, succinct, to the point. Another one was very much fact-based. Another one could sit there and talk to you for hours. Right. So it was like, trying to figure that out and knowing that there's something behind it, but not knowing what exactly it is, and again, it comes down to those human skills. Right. So it's really trying to understand yourself and what you need. What are your motivators? What are your fears? How do you want to be spoken to? And then using that for what I would call the GG, the greater good, in being able to do the same for others. Right. And it's a daily practice. It's something that you kind of have to have in the forefront of your mind because for some reason it doesn't come naturally to us. And I think to your point, Kenny, we're not trained at our formative years. So, as adults, we're kind of stumbling around, pretending like we know what we're doing.
You're doing the best you can, right? With what you have.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know where to find what you don't know what you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? It's all that, and that's what I was going to ask it too. Like, so, because I came through commerce, 30 some years ago, I graduated. Right. And I mean, definitive at the time, the prestigious sessions would have been like finance, accounting, like all the typical ones in business. OB, organizational behavior, was like dead last. That's where that's where you went if you didn't know anything about numbers, but you still wanted a business degree. That would have been the attitude, right?
Yeah.
And yet, has it changed it? Like, because you guys are in the game and you see people, are they at least changing that? Because we got taught shit about you took the one course because it was a fluffy, but you didn't learn anything per se. Like, you know, like Phil said, then you hit the stores or whatever you did there, you're a manager and you're thinking, damn right, I'm a manager. I don't know what it means, but good on me, baby. Right? I'm a manager.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you manage yourself?
I'm personally, I'm out of the kind of university circuit, but I do watch the executive development track. And I know, especially like at the MBA levels, there's a lot of leadership courses. There's, innovation and learning around leadership. There's, a lot of different organizational psychology, behavioral things that are coming up. There's emotional intelligence courses that individuals can take. So it's not, I feel like it's moved from people getting really interested in how this word leadership unfolds as to how people work. And what that means is, evolving from just psych courses or those fluffy OB courses to neuroscience and leadership, and other things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
To build on that a little bit, Ange, I think, or to answer your question, Kenny, as well. I mean, that's why we have an OB student on our roster.
Yeah.
We have somebody who's studying in that and getting his master's, if I'm not mistaken, Ange.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that specific field, and I've learned so much. I think we both have, working with this individual as well. Just in terms of better understanding the evidence-backed research that backs up these things that we're talking about, these programs that we're building.
Yes.
And I think that's another way that we're trying to set ourselves apart. Isn't just, I used to joke with my coaching clients that if you want to become a coach, all you have to do is change your LinkedIn profile and now you're a coach, because that's literally the barrier of entry to becoming a coach. Yeah. Right. And so I think for us, it's really looking at leveraging those tools and tying, again, that evidence-backed research to be able to help elevate skills across the board.
Yeah. Well put, for sure.
It's awesome.
Interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys came on.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys came on too.
Yeah.
I think it'd be nice to actually have you on.
Yeah.
Again.
For sure.
Especially as we start to open up more. What's this next? And again, it's hard for Phil and I sometimes because we have people that we work with now that do listen to the podcast. And I think sometimes they always think it's about them. And it's probably not always about them. It is about them all the time, but it's not always about them. Because I have other clients too, is that this going back to work, what's this work from home going to look like?
Right.
How is this going to work into the pre-COVID where it was 9 to 5 in an office, and what's the new world going to look like? And as management or manager, how are we going to manage this? And what are we going to do this? And what, I guess, what are we going to stick to? What are we going to bend? What are we gonna, how are we going to go through this next part?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely top of mind. We'd be happy to pop back on. And I think that could be a whole hour on itself with regards to working.
The introduction one is done.
Yeah.
Now that you know who you are, the guests know who you are, and that's perfect. But I would like something like that because I'm for sure. Because I'm dying to see how we're going to do this. And even for
we have questions.
It's funny. The older I get, I seem to be mellowing, but I'm also getting older, and I do stick to the shit that I believe. That's gonna. So you're always trying to bend that too, right? Because you got to make sure that I'm moving with the times as well.
Yeah,
as my kids will so eloquently put.
One
They're calling me old and everything else, right? But I like it because I like to learn it. I want to make sure that I'm doing better and that I'm providing, the people that work with me more, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm still making mistakes, and they have the opportunity to maybe help me fix them. As much as me helping them hopefully learn a few tricks or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Happy to.
I would like that.
Yeah, Scott,
Scott's coming back for sure. We're gonna let Scott talk more next time.
Yeah, definitely.
You're running it next time.
The
It's
one
your
thing
podcast.
I was gonna jump in there, Kenny, and say is like the work from home experience we've all had over the past 19 months isn't the actual work from home experience that people will see moving forward, right? I mean, we've all been locked in our homes and everything else, and like it's much different. Speaking from experience, you know, working remotely the past 6 years or so, I think it is timely and needs to be talked about, because leaders need to look at how they're managing people, and if half their team is at the office and the other half of the team is remote, it's much different than motivating everybody all in one place, whether it be they're all remote or they're all in the office.
Well, it's a whole different game, and right, and maybe you know what, maybe a lot of the people that we work with don't want to be all together anymore. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they've just gotten used to a thing. And then how do we work that? How do I work around that?
Exactly.
Again, how do I change my biases? Never mind, just you know, the other, like how do we fix me? Not on this show, by the way. Don't fix on this show.
No.
I had one episode with another person. No more fixing.
Kenny, we'll send you a link where you can book a coaching.
I don't want to be fixed anymore. We fixed Phil. That's who we fixed. Phil got wrapped into one episode. Didn't even know what's happening. Poor guy got fixed. Right, Phil? We're gonna get another.
Kenny,
you know, that episode we'll bring someone new on.
That was
should be fixed.
That was very surprising. I was like, "Oh, you're talking about me." This whole episode we were talking about me. What happened?
Concluded like toward the end. Oh my God, this was all about me. I said, yeah. Get out of it, baby.
Another thing too that comes up as an emerging topic is retention. You know, how do we keep our employees and
that's another
not
hour.
Just right? Seriously, it is.
Because I mean, for like sometime in November, December. That's huge right now.
There's actually
Seriously.
I think there's a bunch. I think there's that one. I think retention. I think work at home.
Massive.
Retention is massive. I think the other one, because we have Kenny said it best, is if you're listening to this and we work with you, it's not all about you. It is just about like our listeners too. Is I do think that when you work with startups and you work with people who are growing their businesses, it requires leadership change. It's one of the hardest things, right? Like you see a lot of that where startup founders get pushed out of their own organizations because they failed, you know, they missed that exit on the interchange, right? As they kept going and the organization needed something different. I think there'd be an interesting conversation about like, what is it that you need to see? Like if you're a founder, what should you be watching for in the organization so that you know, hey, I need to make changes, right? Like I need to adapt my style because the team around me is growing, they're getting bigger, they're getting better at what they do. I'm getting less connected with the job, all those sort of things that I think, kind of leaders struggle with as well, right?
Definitely.
I think those are big
There's
things.
a whole ton. And then there's the
look at that.
agents.
Now
like,
we got this series.
So it's a series. Like,
right?
Like my age, I'm managing my kids these days in a sense, right? My kids' age group, in that mid-20s, thinks totally different than I did in my mid-20s. And how I worked in my mid-20s and what was expected of me is completely, I mean, the shit they ask for, we would never even thought of.
No.
Never mind ask for it. Like you were sick, you just went in and you shut the hell up, put your head down. You died, but you did it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's different. And that wasn't the right way either. That was not the way to do it.
No.
But it's how do you, how does someone
how do you navigate that?
Old, who are a little older, how do we get through this crap?
Definitely.
That's interesting too, right? It's fun.
Yeah.
But it's, like you're thinking, my God, I got two of them. I don't need more.
Well, and that speaks to the, generational working, right? In some organizations or companies, we have 5 generations under one roof. That's substantial. Crazy. It really is.
That's crazy.
And that all in itself is a puzzle piece for HR, to consider, right? So definitely serious is what I'm hearing. Okay,
so you guys have to write down these little, figure out what we're doing. And we have got to be less complicated. I took us 12 months to get this one booked.
I know, right?
This one's been bouncing around since spring. Jeez. Oh my God.
I have a funny story to tell you, and then we'll get you guys to share where everyone can find you. When you told the story about how you started a job, you started the business, and then your son was like, "Hey, when are we going to the toy factory?" When I was job hunting, I had 2 job offers on the table. One was with Pfizer, and the other one was with Sony PlayStation. And my nephew, who was, I think, 4 at the time, right? And he was older than that. I think he was 5 or 6, but he was like, so I remember telling it, like, as I was like, I'm very, very close to my nephew, and I said to him, I got these 2 jobs, and then I went home and said, hey, so listen, good news, I got a new job. And he goes, awesome, when are we getting our first PlayStation? I said, oh no, I took the other job. I took the Pfizer job because it's much more stable. And he didn't talk to me for like a week.
Right? Well, I would have been devastated. Like, we didn't take PlayStation. Who
like
takes
everybody else in
Pfizer
the
over
family was
PlayStation?
like, oh yeah, that's great. We're gonna get free drugs, and And he was like, I can't believe, like,
devastating.
He just
I had
like
a
threw in the
PlayStation
towel.
in my hand, and then you're like, oh,
Devastating.
I wish, you know what? I genuinely wish in some circumstances that we could think like that and keep that innocence in our adulthood and be able to play a bit more. But yeah, that's it.
You're right.
Sorry.
You're right.
Okay. So we're at the end. Do you want to tell people where they can find you guys?
Yeah. Scott, why don't you tell them?
So I guess LinkedIn is probably the best place to find either both myself or Ange. So that's Scott Rust, Rust, and Ange McCabe, MACCABE.
Yes.
Sorry, I was a little slow there. Wow. It's because you don't have it written down like everybody else, Ange. And then otherwise on our website as well at intuityperformance.com. So that's intuityperformance.com.
Yeah.
So
And then we'll add the links to the podcast episode as always. But I'll reach back out and we'll figure out when we do some of these other ones.
Kind of fun.
The work at home thing is
that's a big one.
It's ridiculously timing.
Yeah.
It's just
Scott, you're doing the next one though. Like that's it, man. You got a freebie today.
We're gonna book all 4 and all. It's just gonna be you.
Man.
We're gonna have
and it's
beauty, man. Light it up.
The Scott rambling. You guys really want your viewership to go down? Come on now.
Awesome, guys.
No, for sure. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm glad you guys came on. That's really cool. Thank you.
We're really glad.
Definitely. Looking forward to the next one. And thank you everyone for listening.
Me too. I think I got my notes ready. I might even be prepared for the next one, Phil. Not likely. But no, not likely.
No.
To the right room, Kenny, or
an hour in, and that's
there you go.
Oh my
shit, man. Oh my god. I was thinking, this is a nice guy's quiet bullshit. I don't care. You're one of them.
No.
Fine.
You gotta watch the quiet ones, Kenny.
He's
you know that.
doing the whole one
you
next
know
time.
this.
We're muty, baby. You're on for an hour.
Scott, you just made my day. Thank you.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks
cheers.
for coming.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Guys.
Bye.
You're staying on, Phil, for a moment.
Yeah, stay on for a minute. They're great.
Yeah, they are great. You know what? Just I think it's the talk has to be less talk and more action as everybody goes forward. Yeah. And I know, like, we know the ones who are going to listen to our podcast, we are doing that at our mutual place. It's getting there, it's getting better, but we need to be better, and we'll get better. Yeah, but I'm thinking of a lot of all the other places that I've done over the last couple of years. We need to.
No, it's a thing, man.
This talking really shit ain't going to work anymore. You got to start doing it, man. Start practicing it.
Like the thing is like, if you had room even a couple of years to do such a thing, which you probably didn't, you don't now. Right. Because like nobody can find good people to do jobs.
But you're going to lose them, Phil. It's not even you can't find them. You're going to lose the ones you have.
Well, you are. You're going to lose them fast because they're going to go because now they know, right? Now they know better. They know they can go out and get different jobs. And
they also know there's other people out there that will actually
do
what they say they're going to do, or it'll fit. Like, again, and this is where we get into it. I wish people understand. I'm not saying to make the world, it's all about, it's all nonprofit or whatever. And, we're all going to, be singing.
We're all going to pay everybody like $1 million an
it's
hour.
No big deal, right?
And
it's nothing wrong with making money. A for-profit business is not a sin.
Yeah.
Right. But how you manage your people, to me, is really what it needs to be. Because at the end of the day, money is important, 100%. But, a happy, healthy society is not the worst, outcome of the gig, right?
Agree.
So, Anyway.
Yeah.
See what's happening. You get older, man. You just get fucking soft, right? Jesus Christ.
That's so weird.
What the hell is going on in the kitchen?
Oh man.
What is going on?
That's awesome. No? I really like. I'm glad they came on. I'll book them for another one. So yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.
Oh,
Thank you for listening.
Hey, thanks for listening, Phil. Thanks for being a part of my life today, Gain. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, you're a good host, good friend. We had good guests on today, which was a lot of fun.
All right, stop laying it on.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.